No, Vijan, I'm just saying, like, we've been interviewing Ivy League admits till now, and, like, I don't know why we're having a University of Michigan suddenly. Like, it's just kind of embarrassing.
No, but then Michigan is a good college, and like...
No, I get it, but it's just, like, not our brand, you know? Like,
Michigan is an
like, I just want to have smart people on this podcast.
She's great, she's smart, and a lot of entrepreneurs, great people go to Michigan every year.
I just don't know what I'm going to have to talk to about.
And they produce great people, so don't worry about it. And you'll be good, and she's great.
Fine, I guess so, but, like, I'm not going to have anything in common.
Don't worry, just let's get on with the show. She
fine.
is here. And
okay, fine.
Okay. And action.
Hello and welcome back. It's me, your friendly neighborhood college counselor. In this another episode of Spill the Tea with CC, I have a special guest from the University of Michigan, which is one of the major types of universities, which we covered in our recent video. Check it out on College Fit. This large public university is publicly funded state school that has a very distinct vibe. In this episode, we're gonna learn all about University of Michigan so that you can decide whether it would be the right fit for you and gain insider details from an alum herself about what the experience is really like and some actionable insights that you can use in your application to help you get in. I'm beyond excited to introduce our special guest, Arshi. Arshi, welcome. How are you doing today?
Hi Chandra, thank you so much for having me on your friendly neighborhood college counselor. So excited to be doing this with a fellow Michigan alum who surprisingly seems to be dissing Michigan quite a bit. What's up with that?
Well, no comment there. I think let's just get back to the script. Thank you very much. I don't appreciate the interviewee taking over. Can I get an introduction on you? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, 100%. So I actually went to the University of Michigan and graduated in 2020. I studied economics and also entrepreneurship. So I finished my major in economics and a minor in entrepreneurship. I was one class short of finishing a minor in computer science as well, but I do like to include it as part of my introduction because, you know, I was someone who was really artistically inclined in high school. So to go from that to someone who became very used to all things technical, quantitative at Michigan, that was a huge jump. It was a huge part of my experience, and it's given me a lot of fond memories and made me the person who I am now. So really happy to talk about the school.
Let's get into it. So when I think of Michigan, not like I've ever been there, but when I think of Michigan, I think of massive crowds, huge stadiums filled with cheering fans, football, maize and blue, school spirit. How true did you find this stereotype to be in your experience?
I actually, whenever I describe Michigan to anyone, my first description is that it is a work hard, play hard culture. And that's exactly what you described. When I first went to Michigan, my view of it was also that it is this really academically rigorous environment, but it seems to have this amazing energy in the air, lots of school spirit, sports. You can't, talk about Michigan without talking about sports. But at the same time, like when I actually got to Michigan, I saw how it really balanced all of these parts. Like you would spend the entire week, like Monday to Friday, immersed in studying, running from class to class at the library at like 4 a.m. But as soon as like Friday night hit or Saturday hit, you were out tailgating and, really sort of feeling the energy of the school. And it just did 180 in like, from the week to the weekend. And your same friends who are like recruiting all the time or like really hustling through the week, you got to see them in a different light over the weekend. Mm-hmm. And I think that worked really well for my personality as well.
Well, I can't say the same for me. I was not a big party person in school, but I think what I learned at Michigan was that there was really something for everyone. Mm-hmm. If you weren't the type of person who loved to go out and tailgate, then you would find friends for yourself there.
Yeah.
And, we talk a lot about college vibes. There are the techie schools, the entrepreneurial schools, the artsy schools. And what I realized at Michigan was that there's practically a type of student for every vibe at the same university. It's almost like having 10 colleges in one. Mm-hmm. And, you had your artsy students in Alice Lloyd, but then you had the techie kids in the EECS classes who were just making amazing innovations all the time, absolutely grinding. And then you had the Ross people who were constantly gunning for their consulting internship. So how, could you talk a little bit about that, if you felt like that was true for you, or it brought out different sides to who you were, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think, so actually you mentioned Alice Lloyd, and that's where I lived in my freshman year. And just to give everyone some more context on Alice Lloyd and the housing system at Michigan, when I entered, as I was mentioning, in high school, I was this really like artistic, literary kind of person, super into art, super into writing, very poetic and creative. And I learned about Michigan learning communities, which are essentially theme-based housing. And when I was filling out my housing form, I learned that based off of your interests, you could pick housing where all of those students would be interested in similar things. So I applied for LHSP, which is Lloyd Hall Scholars Program at Alice Lloyd. And that meant that I was surrounded by all of these like artsy kids, and there was a photo studio, art studio, dance studio in our dorm, and we used to have special classes in our dorms itself. So that really brought out like this, it really like helped escalate and elevate my personality that already existed in high school. But I think when I moved out of campus, experienced more sides of Michigan, I saw that I was really pulled out of my comfort zone. So my transition from this very creative literary person to this very entrepreneurial, practical person happened due to different organizations that I was a part of, different classes that I took, and eventually interacting with people from other colleges and departments. Right. And I think that's the beauty of Michigan, that no matter what your identity is, it's such a melting pot that you can really meet people who are so different from you and then pick up their experiences and join them. That I felt really worked well for me. And, I could taste different parts of Michigan as I grew every single year.
Yeah, there's that balance between like being in your comfort zone and then getting exposure to a wide variety of people. It's interesting you mentioned Michigan learning communities. I was also in a Michigan learning community. I was in the residential college, which was an East Quad, the best dorm on campus by far.
Mine was disagree.
Whatever. The theme of my learning community was languages, right? So we had language tables every day where we only spoke in French and only spoke in Russian, only spoke in Spanish, and you would walk around the hallways and you would hardly hear a word of English. Like it would just be this crazy, you'd feel like you were in some kind of foreign country. And that was totally the culture of that building. And what I loved about that was Michigan was an overwhelmingly huge university, especially because I went to a very small high school. And these communities helped me find smaller pockets of people within this massive institution. So it was sort of like finding a smaller community within a large university. And I think Michigan really tries to give students opportunities to find their people, find their tribe, especially early on in the first 2 years before you really kind of go out into the larger sea of kids. But you mentioned a lot about the classes that you took and how they exposed you to new ideas you hadn't thought about, new topics, new subjects. What were some of the favorite classes that you took you feel like really shaped you?
So I took a bunch of classes outside of my major and the core requirements. I was always excited by the electives and, just the sheer diversity. And I was like, yes, I'm studying economics, I'm studying entrepreneurship, but what are some other interests that I can explore? So I was a big fan of history at school, also of astronomy. So I took classes like history of sex and sexuality. I took, a class on discovering aliens. I took a class on dinosaurs because I just filled all of these external academic interests that I had outside of my core discipline. And I got to learn from the best at Michigan. But one class that actually really influenced me and till date I've carried what I've learned from it is this class which I took in my senior year, and it was right before the pandemic hit. So by the way, 2020 when I graduated, the pandemic hit around, I want to say Feb or March, and luckily I just had to do one semester online, but That's why the classes that I took in that semester were very memorable to me. But this one in particular was an entrepreneurship class. It was offered at the School of Information, and it's called Succeeding at Failing. The art of entrepreneurship in the information age. And it was actually taught by a Ross alum. His name was Professor Walt Borland. The class was super interesting because it broke all rules of traditional classes. First of all, it was a gamified course, so you could actually, get any grade you wanted by just collecting points. You could get points from writing papers, reading books, participating in group challenges. Like even the final exam is just like, yes, it's if you collect those many points, you get it. Otherwise, you don't have to take it. What it really taught me was how to cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset and how to really learn from failures and not be afraid of that. Professor Borland, I remember, he would just be like, there's no concept of taking notes in this class, just like sit and listen to me. And he would talk about ideas like go and become an influencer. Why are you going after regular jobs? Like why are you becoming consultants on Wall Street? Like why don't you do something creative? And really inspired all of us to think so differently, and it was very refreshing, especially in an environment like Michigan, to get that sort of insight from him. He also inducted us all into this society that he made up called the Excellent Sheep Society.
Sounds like a cult to me.
Yeah, so it was actually based off of this book, The Excellent Sheep, and that talks about how students in America graduating from elite institutions are all, just on a conveyor belt, all copies of each other, all going and doing the same things, and no one is doing something unique. So he told us, like, don't be sheep, don't follow the path that is just what is traditional. And I think I really carried that into my career choices right after Michigan. I didn't go the traditional route, didn't recruit at the Big Five or like all of the consulting firms my friends were going at. It really gave me the courage to do something different, seek something more meaningful and impactful in my career. And I think that was very, very important to me. So it was an amazing class. Like, it really did influence me in a way that was just outside of the curriculum. True of many universities, I can't speak for the experience of those who went to other schools, but definitely at Michigan, I think, you really have to be a self-starter. Yeah. And I think that probably emerges from this very entrepreneurial vibe the entire school has. Like, it's very like you gotta seek what you want, put yourself out there, get out of your comfort zone. I mean, till my very last day, I remember I was just, hanging around on campus, trying to take some fake graduation photos because I didn't have a graduation due to the pandemic. But I discovered a building literally like 10 minutes from my house on the last day, which I'd never seen in 4 years. And I'm like, there are way too many resources on this university. It's insane. But it's also so amazing to see that each department in itself is a whole world of resources specific to that college, to that department. And it really kind of, when you take a step back, it's so overwhelming to see, overwhelming in a nice way, I guess, to see that there's just so much the university offers. So I think my advice to people going to Michigan would be that definitely make the most of Michigan. In fact, if I'm not wrong, I don't know if you remember this, but there is a class that Michigan offers, which is called How to Make the Most of Your Michigan Experience. Yeah. I mean, the college literally has a class on like how to use its resources just because they're so vast. So yeah, I think it really is what you make of your experience. So it's all there for you to access.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we talk a lot in this series about how your experience at college is not confined to the campus limits, but is really influenced by where you're at, that town, the geography, and we all know and love Ann Arbor. Yeah. So I want you to talk a little bit about, what your experience of that town was like too, and what was it like to go to school in a place like Ann Arbor, Michigan, of all places, so different from Delhi and Dehradun, like where you spent a lot of your time growing up.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually had to make a decision between Michigan, UCLA, and USC when I was picking college.
Wow.
And
Tough choice.
yeah, I mean, choosing Ann Arbor over LA, it really, like, I still tell people about this and they're like, why would you go to Ann Arbor? Like, why not LA? I mean, really? Like, they're like, are you sure you made the right choice? But honestly, I think Ann Arbor was the reason I did that was because I wanted to be in a college town. The comfort of being surrounded by students and in a place that is like large enough. Like, yes, the college in itself, the university is so huge, but then it's a college town, so it balances out, right? Rather than being in a huge public research school in the middle of a city.
Yeah.
So you're like navigating two things. At least here I had the comfort that I can handle being in a college town and then navigate the largeness of the university. I loved Ann Arbor. I remember when my parents were dropping me off and at orientation, we were all visiting and we were just like, we can breathe, honestly, after going, for someone from Delhi, right? Like, absolutely clean, stunning views, no pollution, and so beautiful, right? But also when I started living in Ann Arbor, the things I loved the most were the food scene, so vibrant, so international. You want Korean, you want Italian, it just so much to experiment. Food was amazing, people were amazing, and I think Ann Arbor had an interesting demographic. I think it was just college students and like really old people.
For me, the greenery gave it so much character, and like I think a lot of university students took advantage of the outdoorsy vibe that was around, and you could explore the rest of Michigan. But the weather,
okay, yeah, we have to address that.
We have to talk about the weather.
We have to.
So buckle in, folks. Picture this. You wake up on a breezy morning in January, take a shower to go to class. You put on your coat, you put on your boots, you walk through and you enter your class building. You look down and you realize your hair is completely frozen. There are icicles falling off. Your eyelashes have frost on their tips and your eyeballs are sticking together because they've frozen over. This is the experience of like minus 40-degree weather in Michigan. But yes, I think we all have this story.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you?
I mean, that's definitely not an exaggeration. I remember literally having icicles in my hair and really wondering, like, is this kind of climate even humanly possible to experience? Like, I really did think about like my choice between USC, UCLA, and Michigan. Like,
be prepared to question your choices.
Yes, it was just always there, and I just had to deal with it. I will say that it definitely got better. Maybe my body just got used to it over the winters.
But definitely, if you get a good coat, you get good boots. Make sure you have like gloves and stuff. Like, you're sorted. You'll be fine.
Like, yeah,
you'll be fine.
We were here. We survived. So.
All right, I want to give our students and our audience some advice on how to maximize admission into University of Michigan, which is getting increasingly competitive year on year. How can you display, your fit at this university?
Leadership is huge at Michigan. It's at the cornerstone of its traditions, values, and it's really important for applicants to demonstrate that in their application. Michigan is very, I will say, action-oriented in terms of its leadership. So definitely put some activities there that show how you've created real tangible impact, but also balance that with some school spirit. Michigan is a huge place. It's a large school, but at the same time, the sense of community and camaraderie that exists in the campus, it's important to exhibit that in your application as well. So, talk about perhaps how you have found your community at your high school, or how you have contributed to it, or how you have exhibited school spirit in your context, and share that in your application. Talk about how you intend to use theory or research to create something practical, because Michigan being a research school, that's great. I love the sort of dichotomy of it being a public research university, but at the same time being such a leader in innovation and entrepreneurship. The best sort of like startups coming out of that school.
M-City, like an electric vehicle track literally on the campus.
And Ann Arbor being the upcoming tech hub of the country, the biggest companies moving their headquarters there. Lots of startups in Detroit. So it's really important to keep that balance of like, yes, I'm this very academic, research-oriented person, but I have the ability to translate that into action. So that would be my advice to future applicants.
And finally, our final and most important question of the episode. This is probably some of the hardest hitting journalism we've ever had on Your Friendly Neighborhood College Counselor. Does Soylent run in all Michigan students' veins?
Oh my God, Soylent. So the story behind that is when we were applying to Michigan, we had to take this like writing assessment test, and just to determine like what level of writing you're at and how to begin. And we were asked to read about this thing called Soylent, which is like branded as the future food. All the nutrients that you could possibly want in just one, portion, liquid food. There were lots of names for it, and apparently it tasted like pancake batter. I remember writing at least 20 pages about Soylent's creation, its founding story, its benefits, its controversies, and honestly, I really wonder, I don't know if you're aware, but is this a thing outside of Michigan? Like, what is up with the Soylent story?
So the rumor goes that Soylent, this all-encompassing nutritious food, is really made out of human beings.
What?
That is the rumor.
No way.
That is the rumor.
I had no idea.
And it was actually modeled after this movie called Soylent Green, where it was a horror movie, and they're all drinking this juice, and it was actually made out of human flesh.
No way.
And that is maybe the reason why Michigan students are the way that we are. So I think that is a somber note to end this episode on. That's all for this episode of Spill the Tea with CC. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave in the comment below what university alumni should we host on the show next. And as always, let's hear a piece of advice from our guest, Arushi.
My piece of advice is be open to new experiences, let life happen to you, and don't try to control it. You'll be fine.